Alright, let's paint Doechii today. I'm just using a standard red, blue, and yellow color palette essentially. I'm using French ultramarine as the blue. I find that works better for mixing skin tones, and it's a color that comes in most beginner art packets, so there's a really good chance that you have all three of these colors, and then of course white and black. I'm going to steer away from using black to shade, and I'm going to reserve it for just filling in dark areas on her skin. So this is darkened by the French ultramarine blue. That's why it's got a cooler tone, but that's okay because that side of her face in the reference photo has a pretty cool tone. She has a relatively cool light hitting her on the right side of her face and a relatively warm light hitting her on the left side of her face. And that line becomes really obvious on her nose and forehead. So you can see her left cheek has a lot more of that kind of warm orangey tone to it, and her right cheek has a lot more of that soft kind of grayish white tone to it. So I'm putting in a really warm orangey tone on her forehead and on the right side of her nose, carrying that on into her face a little bit, and then I'm taking that cool color, I'm covering all the dark areas of her skin, and then I'm just going in with this relatively neutral gray tone, more or less to block in these lit areas so that I don't lose them later. I like to work with a sort of very loose undersketch outlining where different shades hit each other or different colors hit each other. Very rarely do I try to focus on actual features. Usually the only features I really try to capture are the eyes. I want to make sure that I have the eyes in the right location, because if you screw them up, it just makes it not look like that person anymore. So now I'm just blocking in all the really dark areas with just some, a dirty brush basically dipped into a little bit of that French ultramarine. And I realize a lot of her needs to be quite a bit darker than what I have it. So I'm going around her forehead, her cheeks, anywhere where this light's casting a shadow. She's getting hit with a pretty direct light in front of her, but it's not enough to entirely wash her out, obviously. There's still contrast, there's still features, so we gotta make sure we don't lose that contrast and lose those features. Now I'm just sort of taking that color in to block out under her eyes. I'm using my big flat square brush for this. I'm gonna try to get away with that for as much as I possibly can. It covers the canvas really well. It holds paint well, and it's still relatively good at getting into fine areas. You can always use a corner of it to kind of scrape paint up into an area that you need it. So I like to use it and a big round brush for as much of it as I can get away with until it comes time to essentially just do the eyes and nostrils and mouth detail. They say with art it takes 20% of your time to get 80% of the way there, and I think that's what I'm really trying to show with these portraits I've been doing recently, that it doesn't take a long time to get something that looks pretty good, or that you'll be proud of at least, something that can convince you you're capable of doing art. And a lot of people just doubt that they can do it. They don't pick up the brush. So I am not starting off incredibly complicated. There's nothing intricate about this. I'm scrubbing it in. There's no special techniques, special brush strokes, nothing that you have to learn or do or know how to do. Any special talents, any special paints. I'm using incredibly cheap brushes. This is on just a piece of paper. And yet you can already kind of see that something is coming together, and I'm just blending it out a little bit, trying to maintain some reference to the actual form of her face. So I'm trying not to blend in any way that doesn't make some kind of directional sense for her skin and her facial features. Now I'm just going to block in these braids. I'm twisting the brush a little bit to give them some jagged detail. I don't want that to be a straight line. Nobody's going to go through and look at her braids and make sure that you have every little twist and turn in there. You just have to imply it. It's the same with the braids on top of her head. I think I probably give her the wrong amount at the end, but that doesn't really matter, and if I really wanted to, it's not an incredibly difficult fix. And I always say hair is like a landscape. Like, nobody remembers where individual hairs are. People have a hard time remembering where like each individual tree is in a landscape, or each individual hair is on somebody's head, or each individual eyelash is. So as long as you just like make it resemble how they think it should look, it works. It's fine. And now I'm just sort of blocking in her irises and the corners of her mouth. Again, for this, I'm just going to use the lamp black. Now I'm going to outline her eyes again with that lamp black. If there's any part on your face that is actually like black, it's the eyelashes, the corner of your eyes, inside your mouth, corner of your mouth, those kind of areas where light just really doesn't get to, or it's a dark spot that's already in shadow. Typically eyelashes are pretty dark. They're typically hooded under your eyebrows. And then contrast that with the rest of your face. It means that they seem incredibly dark relative to everything else, so we're just going to go in with pure black. Plus it helps human eyes stand out, makes people look like people. Now all of her features are more or less in the right place. It's just about making it look like a person and not like a blob of paint. So I'm going to go in and add some of these minor details. Now I'm using the finer brush that I referenced earlier. I'm going to outline her teeth a little bit better with that black. I'm going to outline her lips a little bit better with it, but I'm going to make sure that I don't make it too dark. I'm just trying to add a little bit of contrast, trying to add a little point of distinction, implying her chin, implying her lips, implying the outline of her nose, but I don't want to outline it like she's a cartoon character. I just want to imply that there's a little shadow there, separating everything out, making things project forward, pop, give everything a little bit of 3-dimension. Now I'm looking at the reference photo and seeing where the values don't quite align. I'm trying to adjust, make the light spots light, make the dark spots dark. And you just kind of tweak and adjust until it looks like how you want it to look. Can't forget to add her tape in on the top. I want it to have more of that contrast. I kind of blurred it out earlier. I want to bring some of that back, so I'm going through and making the light areas really light. I want to really emphasize that she's being hit with this white light from one side and warm light from the other side. Now I'm just taking everything that's left on my palette and scribbling it in around her, plus a little bit of green just to add something that's not in this at all. There's no green used. Really, I don't mix the blue and the yellow in any kind of way that makes it greenish. Now I'm just highlighting her jaw and her ears. And there you go. Super simple.